I want to talk to you today about two of the Florida teen reads from this year's list. Awesome books. I probably spoke to you about them last year when I was reading them for the committee, but now that they're on the list, I want to make sure you know how great they are so that you can start reading them too. The first one for today is a book by Resau, and it's called The Queen of Water. Now, the reason why I'm talking about these two books together is because both of them, this one's actually based on a true story, and this one is a true story. But I will say that I read this story and I think, oh, this is what really happened word for the girl, because it's so well written. In fact, as I was reviewing it today, because it's well over a year since I read it, as I was reviewing it today, I started to get drawn back into the story and I wanted to reread it all over again. It's set in Ecuador. A little girl by the name of Virginia. She lives with her family out in the country. They're very poor. They're farmers. They work the land. And that's really, she is destined to do that for her life. She's 7. And some people come from the city and they want Virginia to go with them to the country and take care of their baby. Now, I think to myself, my son just turned 8. I think that's a little crazy that they're going to have a 7-year-old little girl taking care of an infant. And they say, we're going to pay you, and once a month we're going to bring you home to see your family, and we're going to just treat you so well. So her parents agree. Now, Virginia, she thinks like, oh, her parents aren't really going to do this, because a couple of years before, her parents did kind of the same thing, and she was supposed to go and live with someone else. And her mother just couldn't stand it, and she wasn't there very many days, and her mother came back and said, no, you just have to come back home, you just have to come back home. So she keeps thinking, well, her mother's going to come and get her and bring her back home. So they get to the house, and it's a doctor, it's a dentist. The woman is a dentist, and her husband's a businessman, and she is to take care of their baby when they're both at work. And so they leave her in the house with the baby, they lock her in the house, and they give her a list of rules. No watching TV, all these other things. So of course, 5 minutes after they're gone, Virginia, she's a 7-year-old kid. She's jumping on the cushions on the couch. She figures out jumping on the bed is even better. She gets that TV set right on. But what she learns as she is there is that no money ever materializes. They never take her back to see her family. One day she's with the doctor in the grocery store, and they're buying bananas or something, and the person who's working in the store asks her, well, how long is Virginia going to be with you? And she says, oh, she's going to be with us forever. And Virginia starts to panic. She starts to figure out, how can I get out of here, because this is not the life I want. I'm basically a slave to these people. So you need to pick this one up and figure out what else happens. The second one is Little Princes by Conor Grennan. And Conor Grennan was a young man in his 20s. He worked in business. He had amassed a bit of money, and he decided he wanted to travel. So he was traveling around the world, and what he decided was he would spend a few weeks working at an orphanage in Nepal. He sort of thought like, oh, it would sound good to people if he said, well, yes, I'm going to work in this orphanage. Well, what he didn't expect is that when he was there in the orphanage, he fell in love with these little children. They were, just funny and warm and delightful, all together, just having a great time, but of course, missing their families. Well, what he discovers while he's there is that these children are not orphans. These children were brought to the city of Kathmandu by someone who was paid by their parents to bring them to the city and educate them so that they would have a better life than they did living in the mountains, sort of in the middle of nowhere with very little resources and almost no money. But that person who took money from the parents brought these kids, some of them as little as 3 years old, and dumped them in the city, kept the money, went somewhere else in the country, told somebody else the same story, and these kids were just getting dumped and dumped and dumped in the city. So he decides to make it his business to reunite these children with their parents. Two very compelling stories. This year's Florida Teen Reads. Please stop by.